Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. It's not an exaggeration to say that teachers make a difference. Teachers can and do change lives. The best teachers inspire their students. They motivate and encourage as they serve as role models. Recently, the University of Vermont recognized 80 teachers from districts all across the state as outstanding teachers, including one who was selected Teacher of the Year. Across the Fence spoke with the winner. She's a Vermont native who is teaching in her hometown.
We're here at the University of Vermont, where teachers from all over the state have gathered to be recognized for their outstanding work, and that includes Elizabeth Kahn, a Spanish and French teacher who is the Vermont Teacher of the Year for 2020 from the Main Street Middle School in Montpelier. First of all, thank you very much for being with us, and congratulations.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
What was your reaction when you first learned that you are the 2020 Teacher of the Year?
Well, I mean, my immediate reaction was disbelief. You know, there are so many incredible educators all over the state of Vermont, and it was, you know, a real honor and very humbling to realize that I'd been chosen.
And one of the things that you've said is that good teachers don't exist in a vacuum.
Right, exactly. That we constantly learn from each other and our students. And so I feel like the reason I'm here is because of my colleagues.
So what qualities and skills do you think go into a good educator, a good teacher?
Right. I mean, I think there are so many things that make up a good teacher, and we all have different styles and different approaches. But I think the unifying thing for all of us is that we are really committed to our students, and we are able to communicate that to our students, that our students feel seen and heard and valued in our classrooms, and that they know that we're really committed to their learning. So I think that building those relationships is really the key.
Is there something that you think we can do as a state to improve educational outcomes?
Sure. I mean, I think educational achievement is, you know, a complex issue with lots of potential solutions. I know there's a lot of great work going on around the state with regards to, you know, working on multi-tiered systems of support to help have interventions with students who aren't where we want them to be and all that kind of stuff, and really, you know, sort of circling the wagons as a school community to make sure that those kids get what they need. There's also lots of efforts with, you know, creating engaging curriculum and instruction. The state does lots of great work around personalization and flexible pathways. And also there's great work being done to make education accessible to all of our students. But I think fundamentally it comes back to those relationships with the students. I think the bottom line thing that we have to get right is every single kid needs to feel like a part of our school community, and like they're, you know, that we believe in them and that and their success. Engaged
and valued are the words you use.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Now, I've said earlier you teach French and Spanish to middle school students.
Yes.
Why is exposure to a language important at that age? And I believe we're talking 4th and 5th?
We start in 5th grade in my district, so, you know, ages 10 and 11. And, you know, foreign language, there are so many amazing things that I've been able to do through my study of foreign language, traveling to various parts of the world, you know, meeting interesting and new people. But I think also studying a foreign language is all about, there's a sort of underlying the study of foreign language is about recognizing the value of somebody who is different than you, who does not necessarily have the same culture as you or the same value systems or beliefs. And I think that's really important for all of our kids, you know, at all ages, is to really sort of embrace that diversity in our world.
I'm sure the very students that we're talking about at the Main Street Middle School are absolutely thrilled. They're honored that Ms. Kahn is in this position as a Teacher of the Year. Is there anything that you would say then to your local community?
Well, I mean, you said at the beginning, no teacher operates in a vacuum. I have learned so much from my colleagues and their expertise, but also from my students. You know, they have great ideas, and they present unique and interesting challenges all the time that have made me a better teacher, and I'm so thankful for them. I'm proud of them.
Well, very well said, and we're very thankful that you took the time to be with us today. Thank you very much,
Thank you very much
Elizabeth
for having
Kahn.
me.
We're here with the Vermont Teacher of the Year, and with that, we'll go back to the studio.
Once again, our congratulations to Biba Khan of Montpelier, who is the 2020 Vermont Teacher of the Year. There is some mixed news when it comes to STEM education, that is science, technology, engineering, and math. Over the past decade, colleges and universities have reported more young people studying STEM. But now, many schools are seeing a new problem. The young people in a STEM major are not sticking with it. The University of Vermont is taking action and is teaming with the National Science Foundation to find ways to retain STEM students. Rebecca Gollin tells us more.
A new class at the University of Vermont is giving first-year students a decidedly different kind of experience.
We had to build this thing called a bioreactor for a rat lung because they're working on this thing where they're trying to resell different organs with so say I needed a lung transplant, they'd be able to take someone else's cells out of it and put mine into it.
The students are working in groups to come up with solutions for a problem they were presented with in the beginning of the class.
We've been assigned to provide an environment for plankton that they can eat algae.
It's a biology class, but with a twist.
We saw a real place for this sort of maker movement in biology, not to necessarily do biological experiments, but to build equipment to do experiments.
It's called Fab Lab, and it's offered to first-year, first-semester students who want to explore a biology or life science major. Much of their work is done here at the Generator, a makerspace in Burlington where the students learn how to use 3D printers, laser cutters, and other specialized machines to create their designs. Andy Mead teaches the class.
The idea of the class is to expose those students to a side of doing science that they wouldn't get exposed to until much later in the process. It's sort of a kind of creative side of doing science. No, it's got to be the same because these all have to be total length of exactly the same, right?
Mead says that often, when a researcher wants to do an experiment, they must first construct a dedicated piece of equipment to be able to continue. The projects being created here are more than just an exercise. These devices are needed by labs right here at UVM.
Right now, I've actually got an experiment going on where I'm looking at the impact of elevated temperature on the different life history stages of copepods.
Lauren Ashlock is getting her PhD in biology. Her focus is evolutionary biology, specifically the tiny crustaceans called copepods that are stored in these bins. Ashlock realized that a new piece of equipment could help with her experiments.
I was reading a lot of papers on doing feeding experiments with copepods, and a tool came up again and again called a Plankton Wheel, and I didn't know what a Plankton Wheel was, so I Googled it, and it came up with an image of a Hot Wheels car with plankton from SpongeBob on it, and that wasn't quite it, so I had to do some more digging, but essentially it rotates your samples to keep everything in solution, kind of to mimic ocean flow in a lab environment.
Ashlock knew that building this kind of machine would be a big undertaking, so when the opportunity to work with the Fab Lab class came up, she jumped on it.
Time and resources are huge. It costs money for the materials, but also for the expertise in, laser cutting and 3D printing and all of these things that I'm certainly not an expert in. And having the students really take that on and, claim ownership over that project, I could see it got them very excited, but it also for me definitely reduced, the labor and, mental input that I had to put into doing something like that. So I was able to continue with the research I'm doing now, knowing that they're making this awesome tool for me to do an experiment in the future.
Building a piece of working machinery is a daunting task, especially for students who are still undecided about their future in science.
At first, I even left the class because it seemed like so much work, but then I ended up coming back the same day. I went to the advising center and got switched back into it because I was actually kind of excited to see where the project that we were building would possibly go.
The early part of the semester is spent learning how to brainstorm and coming up with as many ideas as possible.
One of the keys of brainstorming is that you don't eliminate any ideas at first, during the first pass. You write down everything you can possibly think of, as silly as it might be. Because even silly ideas might have some good idea hiding behind them.
Even things that might just seem like a pipe dream at first could actually be useful later on. So honestly, that it's not just for this. That's definitely a useful skill that can be used throughout in pretty much any subject where you have to use critical thinking skills, where you have to really think on your own without the help from others.
The class is funded by a 2-year grant from the National Science Foundation, or NSF. That group is interested in whether this hands-on approach will attract more students to science-based fields.
There are two aims of the grant. One is to identify aspects of the maker movement that work really well for students to learn basic concepts. And the other is to understand, to ask whether or not this approach increases attraction to and retention in life sciences.
For UVM, one goal is to use information gathered from the students to better serve those who are thinking about a future in science.
It's really kind of changed my experience, how I think about designing things in college so far.
It's definitely made me rethink about my major. I love physics and I think it's a really cool path, but the reason I value mechanical engineering more is because it's so much broader, and I could be doing something with biology, or I could be doing something in the medical field, I could be doing something with space, and that's kind of what I like about it.
It's a new opportunity for UVM students to get creative close to home. In Burlington, I'm Rebecca Gullen with Across the Fence.
And that's our program for today. Once again, thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.